We are going to call to order the City of Wilmington Board of Adjustments meeting. Today is Thursday, September 19th. It is 1:03. Before we get started, I'm going to read the Board of Adjustment introduction. Hearing before the Board of Adjustments are quasi-judicial in nature. Decisions of the board are based on the record of these proceedings. To grant a variance requires a concurrent vote of 4/5 of the members of the board. To reverse or modify the determination of an administrative official requires a simple majority. Evidence submitted to the board for review becomes part of the record. Appeals of the board's decisions are to Superior Court and are based on the record. Appeals must be filed within 30 days of the date of filing the board's order in the Planning Division. A hearing before the board is conducted in accordance with rules of procedure. Those who want to testify in a case are sworn as witnesses. The chairperson recognizes those who want to testify or their attorneys for presentation of evidence during the hearing. To ensure that testimony is properly recorded, please come forward to address the board, state your name, address, and speak clearly. Before we go on, do you want to go ahead and swear everyone in? Anyone that's going to speak today, would you please rise to be sworn in?
All right, staff, applicants, and members of the public who wish to speak or may speak today, if you'll stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next item will be the approval of the minutes from the August 15th meeting. Take a motion if there isn't any changes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the August 15 meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Those minutes are approved. Our next item is old business. It involves 4009 Masonboro Loop Road. It's for a variance to City Code 18-199 to allow an existing accessory structure that was issued a permit in error to remain, even though it exceeds 100% of the gross floor area for the primary structure. Grace LeMay will be presenting this one.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm Grace LeMay, an associate planner here with the City of Wilmington. Today, our subject property at 4009 Masonboro Loop Road is zoned R15, moderate density, single dwelling residential, and it contains a 1,300 square foot single family dwelling and a 360 square foot accessory building. City Code Section 18199 allows up to 2 accessory buildings on lots in residential districts, provided that the combined area or the square footage does not exceed 100% of the gross floor area of the primary structure. Based on the square footage of the existing house, City Code would allow for the construction of up to 2 accessory structures with a combined gross floor area of 1,300 square feet. With 1 accessory structure existing on the subject property measuring approximately 360 square feet, City Code would permit the construction of a second accessory structure up to 940 square feet for a combined total of 1,300 square feet. In May of 2023, a building permit was issued with approval from city staff for the construction of a roughly 4,000 square foot detached accessory structure on the subject property. Following issuance of the building permit, construction began in May of 2023. In July of 2024, city staff visited the subject property to complete the final zoning inspection of the building and determined that the gross floor area of the accessory structure exceeds that of the primary structure in violation of city code standards. The accessory structure was constructed as per approved plans, bringing the total square footage of both accessory structures to 4,360 square feet. The applicant is requesting a variance to allow the combined gross floor area of the accessory structures to exceed 100% of the gross floor area of the primary structure by 3,060 square feet. The applicant states that all construction has strictly been completed according to the permit approval, and the building has passed all other inspections excluding city zoning. This matter is set before the Board of Adjustment for the meeting on September 19th, 2024. I'd like to present the staff summary and all attachments to the record, and I'm available to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Grace? All right, appreciate it. Does the owner of the applicant wish to make a presentation? All right. We'll move on to the evidentiary hearings. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing, or not, I'm sorry, the evidentiary hearing. All those that are would like to talk related to this matter can come forward at this time? All right. Seeing that we don't have any, anybody have anything else that should be done in this portion of the meeting? All right, we'll go ahead and close the evidentiary hearing. Does the city have any additional information? Okay. That being the case, we can talk about how we should proceed on this one.
Well, I mean, 4,000 square feet's a pretty big miss, but it was permitted and it was constructed per the permit. So if there's no discussion about the matter, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the variance as requested.
I'll second that motion.
All right, there's been a motion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, that variance passes. We'll move on to new business. Item number 2 involves 1912 Oak Street, a variance to section 18-28, dimensional standards for the variance of 4 feet to the required 8 1/2 foot interior side setbacks for multiple nonconforming lots within an R17 residential district. Hey, that was quick.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Bentley Ernest. I'm one of our city planners here. The subject property at 1912 Oak Street is located within the R7 residential zoning district. Within the R7 district, newly created lots must contain at least 7,000 square feet of total lot area and have a minimum lot width of 50 feet. According to New Hanover County tax records, the subject parcel lots contain a total of approximately 36,328 square feet or 0.83 acres. Mapbook 2, page 38 of New Hanover County Register of Deeds lists 1912 Oak Street as originally platted as 6 lots, each approximately 5,400 square feet and 33 feet in width. On January 9th, 2024, the applicant recorded an updated plat to the original 6 lots of record with New Hanover County Register of Deeds. Per Land Development Code Section 1828, the R7 residential district requires a minimum 8.5-foot side interior setback. As the width of the parcels are 17 feet narrower than the required R7 lot width, the applicant has proposed a minimum 4.5-foot side interior setback for all 6 lots. On July 31st, 2024, the applicant submitted a request for a variance of 4.5 feet to the standard side interior setbacks as set forth in Article 2, Section 1828. This matter is set before the Board of Adjustment on September 19th, 2024. I'd like to submit all staff summary and applications and attachments to the record. Myself, as well as the applicant, are also available to answer any additional questions.
All right, does anyone have questions right now for Bentley?
I have a quick question. It says that the applicant recorded an updated plat. Was the updated plat any different from the original plat?
No, as this is an R7 district, they would not have met the minimum dimensional requirements for subdivision here. So the original plat was used to bring these back to the approximately 5,400 square foot lots and 33 feet in width.
Anybody else?
And the original plat was the 1920 map that we had, that one?
Yes, sir. So this is the original March 1920 plat map, Book 2, page 38. As you can see, the red outlines of lots 5, 6, 17, 18, 19, and 20. And then this was the newly recorded original plat map as well. So at some point, the lots were recombined, and the applicant has decided to go back to the original plat map as 33-foot width lots. That happened earlier last year, January 2023.
Anyone else? All right, I know we'll have more questions later.
Perfect.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Would the applicant wish to speak and present any information?
Good afternoon. Thank you for listening to this request for a variance. As she mentioned,
I'm sorry, even though we have your name on the record, I still have to get you to
I'm
state
sorry,
your name and
Darren
address.
Ivy, 203 Borden Avenue is my address.
Perfect, thank you.
I'm the property owner, and will be the contractor and builder of this property. As she mentioned, these are 6 lots of record. We did re-record a map earlier this year, strictly for clarity. The original 1920 map was a little tough to read, so I hired a surveyor. He went out, did a boundary survey, confirmed there were no encroachments, and we re-recorded that map. So that's basically all there is to it. As she mentioned, I'm just trying to reduce the required side setback of 8.5 feet down to 4.5 feet, which would allow me to build houses that are 24 feet wide. This is precedented in the neighborhood. There are 4 examples along North Carolina Avenue. Also, the neighborhood of Carolina Place comes to mind, which is almost entirely made up of 33 feet wide lots. Some of those houses, we've built plenty over there in Carolina Place, and they get as tight as 3.3 feet side setback. And we've never had any issues building them. All drainage is addressed. We are held to a 50% cap on impervious surfaces. So all that drainage would be handled and usually directed to the public right-of-way.
All right.
If you have any other questions, I could try to answer them.
Anybody have any questions of Mr. Ivy?
I thought I heard her mention recombination, but these have never been recombined and you're now splitting. They're just, they've always been 6 lots?
Correct, yep. Since 1920, they've been 6 lots, and we re-recorded the map strictly for clarity, because the old maps were kind of illegible. They were sort of produced in a negative format, and you can't really, they're hard to work with.
As someone who searches title, I appreciate the updated map.
But the lots were never combined into a single parcel, is that right?
I'm sorry?
The lots were never combined into one single parcel?
No, not to my knowledge. I certainly have not. And we acquired the property in 2021, so that has not been done since I owned it. And my understanding is that there are 6 lots of record, never combined into one.
Anybody else?
Yeah, can you speak to the driveways and how these will be accessed?
We haven't started the site plan yet, but I can tell you that I've done other rental properties, I've done a ton of spec houses, and it's always my intent to create off-street parking one way or another. Generally, I plan for 1 parking space per bedroom. In Carolina Place, that wasn't quite doable, but we could generally do 2 parking spaces in the back of those houses, off the alleys. Of course, the houses I'm proposing will not be as wide as what we did in Carolina Place, but I don't foresee any issues getting 1 parking space per bedroom, and I'm planning on doing 3-bedroom houses.
Anybody else? Does the
Just have
city? Oh, go
one
ahead.
more question. So just looking on Google, it looks like there's access by dirt road to the backside of the parcel.
Well, 4 of the lots front the Pine Street right-of-way. That's the dirt road you were referring to. It's an existing public right-of-way. I would be required to make some improvements to it. I don't know what yet. I have not spoken at length with engineering. My understanding is I would have to go through full TRC, and they will require what they're going to require. But I'll have to do some sort of paved surface back there. I'll have to extend water and sewer mains up the Pine Street right-of-way. All of that is expected.
Thanks.
All right. Anybody else? Does the city have any questions of the applicant?
Nothing from the city. I will just confirm that these, I did the research on them, they are still 6 lots of record. New Hanover County occasionally will combine lots into a single parcel ID number just for ease of sending tax bills. So that's why they show up as 1 parcel, but they have been 6 lots since they were originally platted.
Okay. Do you have anyone else that needs to present any information on your
I
part?
do not, but one additional note on drainage I just thought of. Since there is a new road being built in the back, potentially, hopefully, on Pine Street, an engineer will be hired to handle all of that, and they will handle any concerns about drainage. It looks to me like the land is high enough to create drainage runoff to the public right-of-way. Either on the Oak Street side, it would drain straight to Oak Street, or it would drain straight to Pine Street in the back. That should not be a problem. I've never witnessed or observed any standing water on these lots. They're fairly high, in my opinion. I can't tell you the exact elevation, but I know the grade is much higher than, say, Burnett Boulevard down by the entrance to the port. The soils are sandy. I don't see anything that would indicate to me a problem handling the drainage.
All right. Anybody, any more questions right now? We may have some others later,
Okay.
but all right. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Right, we are going to move on to the evidentiary hearing, and we'll open up to non-parties, and we'd ask that you please present information that's relevant and material to this matter. Is there anyone that would like to speak?
Good afternoon. My name's
You
Margie
might need
Erickson.
to bring there you go.
My
Yeah.
name's Margie Erickson. I'm a little nervous.
No worries.
If you could bring up the map that shows all those backyards and how it fronts. I live at 202 North Carolina Avenue and purchased it in 2021. The name on the plat is Douglas Erickson. Our property backs up to this lot, which I understand it's a 1920 plat, but there's never been a house built on those. And my objection is the 33-foot wide. And my comments are that if you look at the surrounding properties, especially the ones that are contiguous, the widths of the property are much wider. Ours is 99 foot wide, our neighbor's 66. The one next, there's one that's 33 foot, and it is a very undesirable house with undesirable tenants at this time. And the next two, I can't see but they're much wider. And then across the street, not even showing, are as wide or wider all around the block there. And over on Oak Street, the properties are all 50 feet or wider. Also, on the other corner of Pine and North Carolina Avenue is a new development. It's not even finished, and it has 7 houses. The width of those properties is 50 feet, and it's very appropriate to the neighborhood, the character of the neighborhood. Pleasing to look at. These in the back at 33 feet are going to be jammed up to each other, and the setback of 4 feet, or 4.5 feet, is just a little too close. And then my biggest objection, of course, is my property. It would be 4.5 feet from my garage, literally. And that's a workshop for my husband. He's a woodworker, and he does a lot of work out there. And we enjoy our backyard. I know that right now, we can't even see that property because of all the trees and bushes, and I know that would all be cleared. So it would be a totally different view. And my objections is the tightness of them, the setbacks so close, and I guess this is down the road, but requesting a privacy fence and appropriate landscaping. And then the other is the drainage. Mr. Ivy spoke about the elevation. It probably is a little higher because the water does drain like a river down Pine Street. And that's where we access the rear of our house, our back door. And with that rain this week, it was like a river. I know Pine Street would have to be developed. It's a 60-foot road that's never been developed. That would mean we'd have a road right up our backyard. I don't know. I talked to my neighbors. They're not for it, but they couldn't make it because they all work. It's just that it doesn't seem to fit the character of the neighborhood is one of my biggest objections. If you look, it just, you can see they're all jammed in there. They won't have, I guess the driveway will be in the front of the house. There is no room for driveways up the side to the back. And if he's gonna have 3 parking spaces, then it'll be nothing but parking in front of those houses in 33 feet. So that's not gonna be pleasant to look at either. I don't know. I guess that's all I have to say.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. And we have are you okay with questions during the, okay, yes, sir.
Can you go back to the prior picture? So is your lot is to the top left?
Correct. That
Wh-
one, yes.
That one right there?
Yes.
And that car being bisected,
Sorry?
there's a property line there and a car halfway in between? Okay, you're good.
See it.
Okay, thanks.
But our garage is right on the blue line.
Okay. Your garage is on the blue line, and then, I got it, thanks.
Sure.
Anybody else have questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is anyone else who'd like to present any information?
Yes, I would like to address a couple points that she made. There are 4 examples of 33 feet wide lots with structures as wide or wider than what I'm requesting all along the adjacent North Carolina Avenue. 214 North Carolina Avenue, which is the one she's referring to, house width is 27 feet wide, which that only yields an average side setback of 3 feet. Going down the list, we have 2025 North Carolina Avenue, another 33-foot wide lot. House width is 26, so that's an average side setback of 3.5 feet. 233 North Carolina Avenue, 33-foot lot, 24-foot wide structure, which is what I'm requesting, and they have an average side setback of 4.5 feet. And then the last example is 241 North Carolina Avenue, another 24-foot wide structure on a 33-foot wide lot, yielding an average side setback of 4.5 feet. So I just wanted to be real clear that there are 4 precedents, not in the greater neighborhood, but immediately adjacent. North Carolina Avenue is the first street to the north. And then as far as drainage goes and driveways, if I have to do a shared driveway down the property lines, I think that is permitted by zoning. And if it's a rub, having parking in the front of the houses, which is not even required by code, but I think it's important to do that. The parking could be put behind the structures. That's not an issue.
And a lot of the things that you address will be outside our purview. We'll be focusing solely on the variance that came before. You'll have to go through
Correct,
the whole
yep.
process. So, but no, we appreciate having it in the public side. But
Yeah. I just wanted to point out that this is very preliminary in the site plan process. It all starts with side setbacks, and then we go from there. We develop the site plan, we develop the house plans after that. But I just want everybody to understand that I do hear her comments, and I'm willing to be a good neighbor. They will be addressed. Not everybody's going to like new construction, I get it, but it's, it kind of is what it is. It's, something's going to be built there, and if you hold me to the 8.5 feet wide structure or the side setbacks, a 16 feet wide structure is going to look awful. It's not going to look good, and it's not going to be architecturally consistent with any other houses in the neighborhood that I'm aware of. I mean, just driving around, everything appears to be 24 feet to, 32 on the bigger lots, maybe wider. I didn't pull up those tax records, but I certainly think a 24-foot wide house with a 4.5-foot side setback will look better than 16 feet wide structures. Because in order to achieve the square footage you want, you got to go really deep, and you're going to end up with these really long, skinny houses, and I guess that's my opinion.
Okay, yeah, and since we're still in the evidentiary part, so you'll have a time, since you're the applicant, you'll have another time to respond in case we have anyone else. But I appreciate you doing that during this part. Thank you for addressing those questions.
All right, thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak while we're still in the evidentiary portion? All right, seeing that we have no further, I'll go ahead and close the evidentiary. I'll ask the city for any follow-up to this.
Has nothing further to add, but we're happy to answer any questions you may have of us.
Okay, all right. Anybody have questions of staff right now?
I do have a question. What's the off-street parking requirement for an R7?
I believe they are required to have off-street parking there, and I believe that it's based on the bedroom count. So I think that with 3 bedrooms, you would be required to have 2 off-street parking spaces. Yes, that's correct.
Thanks.
Anybody else? All right. Mr. Ivey, do you have anything else you'd like to do as far as closing or?
Yes, I stand corrected on the parking requirement. I was not aware of that. I'm more familiar with the R5 requirements, and that's where the bulk of my building has been, in those neighborhoods. Is that correct? Is parking required in R5?
It's not required inside the 1945 corporate limits.
Yeah, that's my comfort zone, just so everybody understands. I build primarily in the 45 corporate limit. So in my past experience and in the historic district here, there is no parking required. But either way, I intend to and will provide parking that will exceed the 2 parking spaces required. I'm going to do 3. And I can go on record as that can be one of the conditions. I'm fine with that.
Okay, and just one thing, because of since it is for a variance, you're required to meet 4 findings of fact that were in your application. Do you want to expand any on those, how you meet those findings?
Only if there are any questions. This is my first time doing this.
No, that's why I wanted just to
if I
draw
need
your.
to elaborate on anything, please let me know.
And we just ask, like, if there's anything, we have everything you submitted, but we always ask if there's anything else that.
Okay.
Does anyone have questions of Mr. Ivey? All right, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, since we've heard from the applicant, we'll go into discussion and see if you have any more questions related. If there is no questions, if you have any direction on how you'd like to proceed with this matter.
I'll say that I think knowing that the R7 requirements that are in the code are based on a 50-foot wide lot, I think the variance request is reasonable, given that he's dealing with a 33-foot wide lot. And I understand the neighbor's concern, but I think her concern is more with the width of the lot, which is not before the board today.
Right.
He is trying to deal with the width of the lot as it is given, and not requesting a variance for that, because that's not something we can do.
And they would have to go through the whole technical review process and go through that, because, like I said, the lots are going to be that size, so it's finding whether the hardship
Right.
is there.
Yeah, the lots are going to be 33 feet wide regardless, because that's the way they're platted. So, I mean, and looking at the four findings of fact, unnecessary hardship, you know, really skinny houses. Hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property because they're 33 feet wide and it's an old platting. Hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant. And there are other homes on 33-foot wide lots that are actually wider than the proposed homes. So in my opinion, I think it does meet the four findings of fact.
Is that a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to grant the variance as requested based on meeting the four findings of fact.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion before vote? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? That variance is granted. We'll move on to item number 3. It's 1 Hanover Street, the variance to Legacy Code Section 18-196, Central Business District, and Section 18-554 to allow a solid masonry steel level facade. Catherine Thurston will be presenting this matter.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. The subject property is a vacant parcel in the Central Business District. It encompasses a full block between Front Street, Nutt Street, Brunswick Street, and Hanover Street. All of the surrounding properties are zoned Central Business District. This is a street view of the subject property looking southeast from Nutt Street and looking northeast from Nutt Street. This property is part of a development agreement between the City of Wilmington and PPD or any successors, which vests new projects under the code in effect in 2009. We'll refer to that as the Legacy Code. And the development agreement also allows city final approval over any building or site design on the development site. Per Legacy Code Section 18196, a street-level facade that faces a public street, riverwalk, or sidewalk shall be predominantly glazed by incorporating windows or doors of clear or lightly tinted glass that allows views into and out of the building. On June 27, 2024, the Technical Review Committee reviewed a project for a new hotel on the subject site with comments that a solid wall, including a retaining wall, cannot exceed 3 feet in height and that the applicant needs to submit elevations showing a predominantly glazed frontage. On August 6, 2024, the applicant submitted a request for a variance to Legacy Code Section 18196 to waive the glazing standards and to Legacy Code Section 18554 to allow a retaining wall over 3 feet in height along Nutt Street. In reviewing the proposed site plan and elevations, it does not appear that a variance to Section 18554 is necessary since the applicant proposes a faux facade rather than a wall along Nutt Street. On September 19, 2024, yesterday, the applicant submitted updated elevations for the proposed hotel. The proposal is still for a faux glass facade along Nutt Street with structural elements for the building behind the glass and visible from the Nutt Street right-of-way. And here's a different proposal, so one of those two options. Should the board grant the proposed variance, the subject development, including design elements, will continue to be subject to final approval by the City of Wilmington. This matter is set for hearing before the Board of Adjustment today, September 19th, 2024. I'd like to submit the case summary, all attachments, and the elevations provided in the PowerPoint presentation into the record. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have of city staff, and the applicant's representative is also present.
All right, I think we have a couple.
Just to confirm, this is a city property.
Yes. Well, it's not city-owned. City controls the design review of the property.
Gotcha.
And you're saying we only really need to consider one variance in this matter? I mean, we'll talk to the applicant, but is
We
that?
don't believe that both variances are necessary because what they're proposing is a wall, a faux facade, rather than, you know, a standard like fence or wall, as the section that they've requested the variance from would refer to.
Okay, so
So the retaining wall over 3 feet in height is not really, we don't need to consider that, is that right?
We don't, staff doesn't believe that's relevant for the request.
all right, anybody else? All right, I know we'll have more questions later, but thank you.
Certainly, thank you.
Go ahead. go ahead and acknowledge the applicant and their agent.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Sam Potter. I'm an attorney here in Wilmington. I'm representing the applicant today. I've got a presentation.
Okay, sure.
Pulling up right now. Just while that's getting pulled up, it's accurate. The original design that was shown to the city showed the Nutt Street frontage closer to the road than the building itself. So the building was set back. And so staff's interpretation at the time was that that was essentially a retaining wall that needed a variance. We've since sort of redesigned the building to bring the hotel flush with the front along Nutt Street, therefore making it just the exterior structure. And in working with Ms. Thurston, she agreed that that was no longer a variance that we needed. So it's accurate.
Okay,
We're
so-
just talking about the glazing is what
Okay,
we're talking about today.
Good, thank you.
Just to give you an overview of the property, this is the former Almont shipping site, and for those of y'all that are from Wilmington, remember back in the 90s when this was all a industrial area, and it's been developed over the last 20 years with PPD, the Pier 33 apartments, the marina, and the convention center, which is catty corner across the street from the subject property. I was able to pull an aerial of what the property looked like in 2002. This is an aerial from Google Earth that shows the Almont shipping site. You can see the tankers and all the stored materials. The current zoning is Central Business District, and we've got the primary goals of the Central Business District on the screen in front of you. That'll become relevant during our closing statement about whether we meet the spirit and the intent of the ordinance. Ms. Thurston did a great job of explaining what it is that we're seeking. The reason why we're seeking a variance, and we've got experts with us here today to talk about this, is that in addition to the site being in the CBD district, it is contaminated. It's part of a Brownsfields program, both the soil and the water. And the property slopes 13 feet from Front Street down to Nutt Street. So the engineers are going to talk about the importance of that, but that's what makes this site unique. And the reason why we need the variance is because it's the Nutt Street facade that you see on your screen is, like I said, 13 feet below Front Street. And so in order to create spaces behind these facades, you would have to excavate significant amounts of dirt in order to create spaces behind them. So our proposal is to create the facades that the code wants, that you don't have these monolithic walls along streets in downtown Wilmington, that you instead have the storefront appearance. We create the storefront appearance, it's just we need opaque glass because what you would see behind the clear glass would basically be the structure of the building. You'd see dirt and sheet piles and those types of things. So we think we meet the spirit intent of the ordinance in that we're creating the aesthetic effect that's required, but we want to do opaque glass because who really wants to see what would be behind this glass? So with that being said, and this being quasi-judicial, we have a team of professionals here today to talk about the environmental components of the site considerations, as well as the aesthetic considerations. So I'll start with calling Caitlin Roanhouse. She's an environmental engineer with Geosyntec here in Wilmington.
All right, thank you.
Chairman, members of the board, hello, thank you. As you said, I'm
Just-
Caitlin Roanhouse.
Yeah, thank you.
7163 Maple Leaf. So I'm the environmental consultant that's working on this project. My goal here is to explain the environmental considerations that really make this project and the variance request a requirement for this to actually move forward. So I've been working in the consulting world for 2 decades. I'm a professional engineer. My main line of work is brownfields. So I've been working on over 50 brownfields across the state, but most of my projects are here in Wilmington. And I'm going to talk through some of those actually that are in town, so you can understand kind of how this has been considered at other sites. So these are all the projects that we've worked on. My company's Geosyntec in downtown. I want to highlight a few of them. These are all North Carolina brownfields projects. What that means is they were enrolled in North Carolina DEQ's program. There was a fee that was paid, and the goal of that program is to redevelop them safely. So there's considerations for soil contamination, groundwater contamination, et cetera, that have to be complied with to make these developments happen. So the first is the Metropolitan, just north of that. This is part of that Almont Shipping. That was just constructed, last year. That site was actually filled in over the last 100 years. It was kind of like a makeshift landfill. And so the elevation's actually higher than the One Hanover elevation, and didn't have those kind of groundwater issues that we're going to talk about today. But there was some significant bulkhead reinforcement that had to happen on the river for them to be able to construct that property. Now we have Eagles Island. That's been pretty contentious lately. You guys have heard about the kind of western riverfront issues. Nevertheless, if that does need to be redeveloped, there's over 10 feet of fill that have to be brought in to make that site safe, to get out of the water table, to avoid flooding. So just kind of keep that in mind. So bigger property, there wouldn't need to be, that retaining wall there, but all that fill would need to be brought in to avoid the problems that we're going to discuss today. And then we have the WDAY site that's been vacant for forever. You guys probably have driven past it and seen that really disrepaired retaining wall. So there's actually a retaining wall adjacent to this property that was needed to be constructed originally to make the WWY building constructible. Right now, it's a structural nightmare. There would be a lot of work that had to be done to be able to actually build in that property to make it safe. So, ironically, that site just to the south of it needed this exact same thing done to be able to be constructed. The One Hanover site's been kind of sitting around for a long time, and these environmental issues are really what's stopping it from being redeveloped into something great that's going to reflect on what's already there with the convention center and the amphitheater. So I'm going to talk just about this site. This is the aerial view. These 6 locations are sampling locations that we sampled this year. They are something called soil vapor samples, which means you have your land surface. Below that you have this interval of soil that is not saturated, and below that you have your groundwater table. We went out and installed these, and we found the groundwater at about 1 foot. So it means you go 1 foot into the ground and you're into the groundwater. So that means if you are trenching to put in utilities, if you're putting in footers, whatever you're doing, you're now in the water. Now during construction, that's manageable. We can typically do temporary watering. We can put that water into, say, the stormwater system, and that goes into the river. Well, the problem here is the water is contaminated. We don't want to put contaminated water into the river. To give you some perspective, I have 2 kind of tables up here. The one to the south, the one on the bottom is the groundwater. PCE and TCE, they stand for a much bigger word, but they're basically chlorinated solvents, dry cleaning solvents. You guys have heard of that. That's a big problem everywhere. The groundwater standard is the number in the middle, 0.7 and 3, and our concentrations are in the 50s and the 20s, to give you an idea of how contaminated the groundwater is. So we can't be putting that water into the stormwater system and then discharging it to the river. So that has to go someplace, which is basically CFPUA. It goes to the same place where your septic waste would go. During construction, that's a temporary fix. You can pay that fee, but if you're going to be putting in structures that are at this level, it's going to require permanent dewatering. So you're going to be paying a fee. We're going to be discharging contaminated water to CFPUA forever. We already have a PFAS issue. This stuff competes with PFAS. So now we're going to be burning up carbon at the POTW faster because we're putting this into their system. So really, what we're trying to do here is avoid putting in something at this ground level that's going to require constant dewatering. And I'm going to talk about the expenses of that later. The second component that we want to consider is vapor. So the soil vapor, these are volatile contaminants. They want to be in the vapor phase. So you put a building on top of this land, and these vapors, which are super toxic, get into your building, you breathe them, they can cause cancer, other issues, which means that if you construct a building, you have to put in a vapor barrier or some sort of system to ventilate everything away from that. You can't put that system at that level and have it come in contact with water. So this site needs to be raised in order to develop any sort of structure on this to be able to make it safe and to avoid these dewatering problems. And those are the concentrations in the vapors, just to, again, give you some perspective of how hot the site is. So any questions on that and that data?
Anybody? I think we're good so far.
So I just want to real quickly talk about the dewatering costs. These are some preliminary numbers that we kind of ran, talking with CAPUA. Their fees to handle contaminated water is $4.63 per 1,000 gallons. And that means that they're going to take that on and they're saying, we will treat this, but it's going to cost you. Now, the design to do the continuous dewatering is estimated at 50 to 100 gallons per minute. It's a lot of water. So just over 1 year, up to maybe $250,000 to discharge this water into the sewer system and have it be treated by CAPUA. So it's really the rate limiting factor in getting developer in here and allowing them to make the site safe, to put the vapor barrier in and to get out of the water table. It's not going to pencil out if we can't raise this property and get it into a better elevation. And that's the reason, I mean, this is the environmental part. They're going to talk about, the actual variance that we're asking for, but this is the reason that we need this wall. That's going to be, basically dirt and structural material as opposed to a storefront property that's going to be on Nutt Street.
Okay. And anybody have questions for Mrs. Roadhouse?
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right.
All right. Howard Resnick is a local engineer with CSD Engineering. He's the site engineer on this project, and Mr. Resnick is going to come up and talk about the site.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name's Howard Resnick. I'm with CSD Engineering, a local practicing civil engineer since 2000, licensed in several states. North Carolina is one of them, obviously.
And just your address for the record.
I'm sorry?
I just need your address for the record.
Okay, 3805 Cherry Avenue.
All right, thank you.
This is actually our second shot designing this site. Originally, this was supposed to be a Hotel Indigo site. Project didn't get the funding, but it was kind of the same deal where we were dealing with groundwater contamination. At that time, we ended up doing a dewatering system. That project actually had true frontage on Nutt Street, and the only way you could do that was to dewater because you had to excavate into the embankment between Nutt Street and North Front. With this round of design, we took another look at it. The first concept did have at-grade parking structure with Nutt Street, so access to a parking structure that was at the same grade level or elevation as Nutt Street. Again, it would have required the same thing, excavation into the embankment towards North Front Street. If you were in the parking structure standing adjacent to North Front Street, you would be some 12 to 13 feet below North Front Street. Again, that would have required excavation, removal of all that material, retaining wall below North Front Street, and dewatering, and as Caitlin mentioned, an extensive dewatering system that would be very costly to install and maintain, as well as ongoing yearly cost associated with treatment of the collected groundwater. So we decided to take a different approach. We looked at it and said, hey, what if we just left the embankment alone, didn't excavate into the ground, then you wouldn't need dewatering. And in that design concept, we would have a site which was at grade with North Front Street. And of course, this would require fill on the site and a retaining wall system along Nutt Street and the adjacent side street. So that's kind of the approach we took, and we brought in other consultants such as Caitlin to assist us with the process, as well as structural engineer. The architect's been involved from day one, and looked at how we would do this approach. And of course, one of the hurdles we encountered was the wall issue. It was initially brought to our attention that a retaining wall was not allowed in the CBD. And then again, then we got into the store frontage and the glazing requirements. So that's how we landed at needing to seek these variances. At the end of the day, the solution was a sheet pile wall, and I have the architect here as well, Tom Calloway. a sheet pile wall, and then, of course, we didn't want to leave an ugly sheet pile wall, so we looked at putting some sort of glazing, some sort of facade in front of the retaining wall, the structural wall. So that was more conforming with what the city expects to see in a central business district. And so I think what's happened is Tom has done a few different scenarios, a few different concepts of what it could look like. At the end of the day, I think we're just looking at the variance from the opacity requirements of the glazing, such that we can get to a final design. These designs that Tom's going to share aren't necessarily exactly what's going to go out, but we need that variance so that we can have the flexibility to make it look like something the city's going to approve. I am happy to answer any questions which you guys may have for me. I'm here to support the team.
Okay. Questions from Mr. Resnick? I just have one. When we were talking about the dewatering, because the reason to do this is to avoid that. The little bit I know, that process, if we have storms or failures, our power grid goes down, then that causes that contamination to be untreated for a while if you have those types of systems. So the goal is to avoid those types of systems because of, is that an answer, or should have I asked? Probably should have asked Ms. Roadhouse that question.
Sure.
But
I think, as Caitlin mentioned, there are similar systems like that out there. The projects I've done in the area, I did the Pier 33 project and the two restaurants, the Marina Grill and what is now the Tequila Comida. We also did the civil for the Metropolitan. Not every site needs the dewatering because it's contaminated. It depends on the approach. In this case, if the client was very insistent upon having a parking structure beneath or store frontage beneath fronting Nut Street, then yes, we would have to have a dewatering system. But it just becomes more financially feasible when we avoid that altogether. Again, the initial cost of the installation of the system, the ongoing maintenance, and then the cost of treatment of the stormwater.
Okay.
The collected groundwater.
yeah, all right, thank you. And anybody? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
So your question was the concern with that dewatering
When you
system
have
failing?
when you have those, and then we have some type of issue where there's say a power failure and a backup failure.
I mean, that'd be catastrophic. If you're dewatering and I'm sure there's backups, and, the PPD building has a similar system, and it costs the city a lot of money every year that taxpayers are paying. So I'm sure there's backups to backups on that, but yeah, it could be very bad if.
Yeah, that was just, my concern was like, doing something like this gets you away from
Avoiding
having to do
that.
that. Okay,
Correct.
yeah,
Thank
that
you.
was it. Thank you.
The architect, Mr. Tom Callaway, is here as well to talk about the aesthetic considerations. I just wanted to elaborate before he gets up here, though, really quickly, that, and Ms. Thurston can correct me if I say this wrong, it's not just that we're seeking a variance to prevent seeing into the building, it's that the staff's interpretation is that the code requires that you be able to see out of the building as well, meaning if you somehow could get behind, you're supposed to somehow be able to get behind the glass inside the building and see out of it. So just making it clear, it's not just seeing into, but it's seeing out of that the code requires, if I'm saying that correctly. That's staff's interpretation.
Code language is on a slide in staff's presentation if we do need to refer back to it, but yes, that's correct.
Callaway.
Members of the board, my name is Tom Callaway. My office is at 525 Vine Street in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. My firm is an architectural firm with offices in Winston-Salem and Raleigh. We have designed numerous other hotels and hospitality properties over the years. The designs you see on the screen are conceptual designs. We are working with two different hotel flags. The names of the hotel flags you would certainly recognize. Our goal is to design an attractive street facade that will blend appropriately with the design of two different hotels. Ultimately, these hotels will look different because it is two different hotel flags. And what you see before you are two approaches of how we might develop the design along Nutt Street and the adjacent Brunswick and Hanover streets that consist of a combination of opaque storefront and brick niches and canopies. In other words, we've tried to break up the streetscape to make it an attractive streetscape that would enhance the street experience as well as blend with the architecture of the two hotels. So we show two different approaches, one that's sort of broken up with seating areas, masonry, storefront, as well as another that is just totally storefront along Nutt Street, which is the scheme, the lower scheme, the second scheme, which would be scheme B. If you would show that scheme, please. Do I do that? Help me, Sam. Yeah. Okay, got it. So this is the really showing the same concepts, but showing with a different material for the exterior skin of the hotels. And again, I remind you, both of these hotels will be different and they will be different designs. But the design that you see here along Nutt Street and Hanover Street and Brunswick Street would be consistent with these sketches. We are designing these as opaque glass, not transparent glass. The problem with transparent glazing, if you're transparent glazing looking into a solid wall behind you, you're creating a pocket that would be an opportunity for condensate to streak the inside of the glazing, an opportunity for mold and mildew. It would be very unattractive in our opinion, so we would suggest that the glazing be opaque. And that's my presentation, sir.
All right, anybody have any questions for Mr. Callaway? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our expert's testimony. I would just submit that we've met the 4 criteria required in order to grant a variance. Unnecessary hardship would result if the variance is not granted. Significant excavation of contaminated soils is unnecessary and expensive. You heard Ms. Roanhouse speak to the costs associated with that, but also the public's interest in not having more of this contaminated groundwater pumped into our CFPUA systems. The hardship is unique to the site. There are both the environmental issues and the sloping topography make it unique in the CBD. These issues were obviously not created by the owner. These were issues created over 150 years of this site being used as shipping and industrial use. And the proposal is consistent with the spirit and the intent of the CBD, specifically the facade requirements, in that you're still getting the storefront. You're not getting monolithic walls along sidewalks and along streets. So we would submit that we've met the 4 criteria and have presented evidence of each of those criteria, and we would ask you that you please approve our requested variance. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Any questions?
Anybody at this time? All right, we may have some other ones. But thank you. Any questions of the applicant from the city at all? Or any statements?
I just have a question. I'm not sure who's best to answer it, but the dewatering and the costs thereof, is that for the entire site, or has the applicant looked at any opportunity to excavate a portion of the site and then backfill behind it, but still have usable space along Nutt Street?
Catherine, I think there's certainly, you could certainly excavate a portion of it. In the eyes of the owners, I think it's all or nothing. But certainly you could do a portion of it and have a smaller dewatering system. From a civil standpoint, it becomes a little problematic because the likely place to do that would be along the Nutt Street frontage. I think that's probably what you're getting at, wanting to create actual storefront along that. The problem is the location of the stormwater, of the utility infrastructure, I think is all the way over on the northeast side of it. So you'd somehow have to get the dewatering effluent to that location so that it could hit the CFUA system. It's possible, definitely possible. Again, what the cost of that is, if you're only excavating a quarter of the system, is it a quarter of the cost? Probably not. It's probably only, maybe like 10% less. You still have a dewatering system. You're still dealing with the same amount of water that's coming down that gradient. It's just not as extensive because you're not developing as much in terms of development, but you still have to take care of all of the water which is coming down gradient. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a question?
Yep.
Mr.
Resnick?
Mr. Resnick, he has a question for you.
Yes, sir. So if you brought in a significant amount of backfill, would the water table still rise? Because what they say is a foot below the ground surface. So would that still require dewatering?
So no, basically the concept here is to leave the groundwater alone, is to not, are you asking if the placement of the fill would affect the groundwater?
Right. So upstream, I guess, of where the hotel is going to be, the ground, I don't know what the elevation of the groundwater would be, and with it kind of sloping downhill, I guess the groundwater table would either be consistent up on the higher elevation, so like how does it go? And then if you bring in fill, will that groundwater surface then kind of more closely follow that that infill material?
So maybe Caitlin can speak to this a little bit, but typically groundwater gradients follow the existing topography.
Right.
And I don't think when you place fill on top of that, it alters that groundwater hydrology, but she's the expert on this.
Well, I think to answer your question is, so you're proposing, same thing we're proposing, which is.
So I'm just nervous that if you bring in infill and you don't have a dewatering system, then your groundwater the height of your groundwater might, increase and be closer to the infill elevation to match like whatever's uphill of the higher elevation.
So the groundwater table is going to stay the same. So if you add 10 feet, it's 1 foot below grade, now it's going to be 9 feet below grade, right?
Yeah.
So that's basically what we're proposing, is to, but if you brought all that feed in, you're out of the water table now, well, how do you handle that?
Right.
That soil. So you need to structurally reinforce that so you can build on top of it. So originally we said we'll have a retaining wall. Instead of having a retaining wall, we're basically saying we're going to have it look like the back of the building, but if you were to see through that, that storefront, you're going to see that dirt and you're going to see that reinforcement. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we're kind of, there's no risk of if we raise, the site with dirt, that the water table is going to be raised with it. If that answers your question.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any other evidence from any other party for this time? We're going to go into the evidentiary hearing. We'll open this up for anyone that would like to speak and has information related to this matter. Being that I see none, we'll go ahead and close the evidentiary hearing. Does the city have any information and any follow-up on this?
Nothing further from the city.
Okay. Mr. Potter, do you have anything you'd like to close with?
Quasi-judicial. I just ask that our report be accepted or our presentation be accepted into the record along with the testimony of our witnesses.
Okay. Yeah. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Potter? All right. Thank you. All right. That being the case, we'll talk about how you'd like to proceed. Does anyone have any questions or discussion?
There was a lot presented, but I think the limit of what the variance request is for us is instead of clear glass or slightly tinted glass, we allow opaque glass. And that's really all we're saying is a glass, instead of being clear or slightly tinted, can be opaque.
Yeah,
that's all we're really considering. So just clarification there.
Yes. Being that, we are only considering the one variance and relates to, I guess, their dynamic of having to avoid some of the other things. So does anyone have a motion, or is there further discussion?
So the variance request is what we have in front of us and not what's on the agenda.
Right, we just have one now, not two.
Gotcha. Well, I'll make a motion that we grant the variance request as outlined in front of us, that it meets the 4 findings of fact.
All right, there's been a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been second. All those in favor of the variance, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That variance passes. We'll move on to our next.
3-minute break,
All right.
maybe 2.5.
We'll take a break. It's 2:08. We'll come back at 2:13. We'll go ahead and recall where it's 2:17. Before we go further, since we've had new people come in, we'll go ahead and anyone that's going to speak today that hasn't been sworn in, if you would please stand so we could swear you in.
All right, if you'll raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
All right. We are now on item number 4. This is 14 Wilmington Avenue. This is a variance pursuant to City Code Chapter 18, Section 18-316, to allow the removal of 8 specimen trees in the Commercial Service District. Grace, thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm Grace LeMay, Associate Planner with the City of Wilmington. Today, our subject property, 14 Wilmington Avenue, is zoned commercial services and is approximately 0.8 acres. According to New Hanover County tax records, the property currently contains a single-family residence and several accessory structures. On or about July 1st, the applicant submitted an application for preliminary review by the city's Technical Review Committee. On July 11th, 2024, the TRC reviewed the applicant's proposal for 13 townhome units in 3 buildings on the subject property and determined that there were specimen trees on site that would require approval from the Board of Adjustment prior to removal. The applicant has identified 99 trees, 9 of which are considered specimen trees. The proposed development consists of removing 75 trees from the site, 6 of which are specimen trees. The specimen trees to be removed include 1 28-inch bald cypress, 2 29-inch longleaf pines, and 3 live oaks, measuring at 34 inches, 39 inches, and 48 inches. Each of these trees either falls within the footprint of the proposed townhomes or conflicts with the internal drive aisle and sidewalks of the development. City's code states that protected trees existing on the site prior to development or redevelopment that meet the prescribed size threshold shall be retained. The code further states that removal of specimen trees shall only be authorized by a variance from the Board of Adjustment. The applicant has requested a variance to City Code Section 18-316 to remove 6 specimen trees from the property. The applicant states that the location of the trees in proximity to the developable area of the parcel significantly prevents the property from being utilized as a permitted use within the current and proposed zoning district. 5 of the 6 specimen trees are located on the periphery of the property and appear to be outside of any building footprint. The applicant has not demonstrated that the site cannot be developed to the proposed density without removal of 6 of the specimen trees. And the applicant further states that removal of the trees would be fully mitigated according to requirements of the city code. On August 2nd, 2024, planning staff accepted an application for a variance to the tree preservation standards for a property in the Commercial Services District pursuant to Land Development Code Section 18-316. Should the board vote to grant the variance, the staff proposes the following conditions: that no tree removal shall occur until final site plan approval by the TRC. The applicant shall work with city staff to design the project in such a manner that specimen trees are preserved and protected, including employing flexibility of setbacks and waivers from technical standards where appropriate. Any changes made to the site plan that result in the ability to preserve specimen trees shall invalidate the variance as applicable to those trees. This matter is set for hearing before the Board of Adjustment on September 19th, 2024. I'd like to present the staff summary and all attachments to the record. I'm available for any questions you guys have.
All right, does anyone have any questions at this time? Before we go further, we've had a member bring up the fact that they may need to see if a recusal is required.
I think I need to, yeah.
And we'll have to ask our city attorney.
Ms. Bennington would need to state the need for her variance, the
Right.
cause, and the board would then vote to determine whether or not she should be recused.
Okay, thank you.
I think that the agent is a current client of the firm.
Do you believe that you could hear this request impartially?
No.
All right, that being stated, we, as a board, take a vote for that recusal. All those in favor of the recusal, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, thank you. We are in a situation where we require a unanimous.
Yes, all four members would be required to vote to approve this variance request for the applicant to get the requested variance.
Okay, I guess we'll have the applicant come up and, or the agent for the applicant come up and we can discuss that further. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Jake Modesto, 16030 Moxie Glen Court, Charlotte, North Carolina. So it's only four, there's no alternatives?
We don't have an alternate here. It was, so originally it was requested if anyone had any.
Okay.
And so we're in a situation where you could ask to be moved to the next meeting so you have 5 members, because you would have to.
And that decision would have to be made right now?
Um,
I guess I would have to verify if the actual client is not here.
Yeah, what we could do is continue this into the meeting and let him meet with his client while we go on to another item?
Yeah, if you want to close out the item, we can come back to it.
Okay, that's what we'll do is we'll close out and we'll continue yours till later into the meeting.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, so
I just want confirmation before we proceed. I have a feeling I know the answer, but I just want to
Yeah,
confirm.
like I said, I apologize for the inconvenience.
No,
We tried to do it
it's not
ahead
your
of time.
fault at all.
Yeah, so.
Appreciate you.
So we'll go ahead and do I need a motion to close out the item?
I'll make a motion that we close that item till later in the meeting and proceed with item 5.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. And so we'll move that down. We'll move on. We'll go ahead. You come back and join us. We're going to move on to item number 5. It's 2505 Carolina Beach Road. Request for the variance to landscaping requirements set forth in the City Code Section 18-419 and 18-321, and to the requirements for the installation of sidewalks pursuant to City Code Section 18-359 to facilitate reuse of an existing commercial structure for nightclub or event venue. This will be presented by Catherine Thurston.
Thank you, Chairman Hoppus. The subject property at 2505 Carolina Beach Road is zoned commercial services and contains a vacant commercial structure that operated as a restaurant until about 2013 and then subsequently operated as a nightclub until about 2020. The property is bounded by Buckingham Avenue to the north and Carolina Beach Road to the west. This is a photo of the building from Carolina Beach Road looking northeast towards Buckingham Drive. Here are a few photos of the frontage along Carolina Beach Road. You can see the date on this picture is from December 18th, 2023, when city staff inspected the subject property and determined that site work to remove the existing asphalt parking lot had occurred without approval, and they issued a stop work order and a notice of violation. Subsequently, the applicant submitted an application for a parking lot plan by the Technical Review Committee. On June 27, 2024, the city's TRC reviewed the subject site for a parking plan and discussed code requirements, including landscaping, sidewalk improvements, parking, and driveway access. City Code Section 18319 requires streetscape landscaping along Carolina Beach Road and Buckingham Avenue at a minimum depth of 15 feet Here's an illustration of what the landscaping should look like along, that's showing a building pulled to the street, which this one is set back, but it shows what the street yard landscaping should look like. And then the green lines to the right on the site plan is where the required locations for the streetscape landscaping are. Section 18.321 requires a perimeter buffer at least 5 feet in width along any side of a parking lot abutting a separate parking lot or driveway. You can see the green line to the right on the site plan is showing where that landscaping is required. And then section 18.359 requires the installation of sidewalk along all adjacent streets and a pedestrian connection to all entrances. In red shows the approximate location of the required sidewalks. On August 6, 2024, the applicant submitted a request for a variance to City Code Sections 18.319, 18.321, and 18.359 to facilitate redevelopment of the site for a proposed nightclub, event venue, or a restaurant use. And this matter is set for hearing today, September 19, 2024. Staff would like to say that should the board choose to grant the proposed variances, staff recommends the following conditions and modifications. One is that sidewalks shall be installed along all developed portions of the site, including Carolina Beach Road and the portion of Buckingham Avenue that contains the commercial use. Also, that any portions of the sidewalk that are not installed along the property shall be subject to a fee in lieu to facilitate sidewalk construction in the vicinity of the subject property. And also that curb and gutter is installed along Carolina Beach Road through the turn radius along Buckingham Drive. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have of city staff, and the applicant's attorney is here with a presentation as well.
All right, does anyone have any questions of Catherine at this time? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I know we'll have some later. All right,
Good afternoon, honorable members of the board. My name is Steve Coggins of 2419 Market Street, Roundtree, Losi, and it's my pleasure to represent the applicant, the owner of this property of 2505 Carolina Beach Road. I'd like to correct just something on the agenda. The proposed use is not only for a nightclub and event center, but also a restaurant, where the site was also historically a restaurant going back to the 1970s. 2505 Carolina Beach Road is an anomaly. It's been that location, a tired, if you would, looking nightclub with a parking lot built in the early 70s, devoid of landscaping or any sidewalks. It began to look seedy. It's particularly small compared to adjacent properties because of an interesting contradiction that in the mid-60s, this particular area was platted as a residential subdivision that extended supposed to extend all the way back from Carolina Beach Road, extending eastward to 17th Street at the hospital. That vision obviously never happened, which we can prepare to show you that, but it illustrates as to why are we here. We are here because in order to have a viable restaurant, an event center, and a nightclub for the existing building there, that's roughly 3,500 square feet, you need parking that's at least 30 spaces, minimum. The previous parking lot was 45 spaces. But the imposition of the requisite landscaping and sidewalk requirements for the city would reduce that number of parking to only 20 spaces, which then renders the site unusable. Well, you may ask, well, then why are there other businesses that are restaurants that are able to thrive there at Carolina Beach Road South and near Shipyard? Why are they able to do so? And the simple answer to that is size, and that goes to one of the peculiarities here. As it turns out, this particular lot is a combination on the frontage of Carolina Beach Road South of 3 lots, each one 35 feet wide. Put together, that's roughly 105 feet width. Whereas in order to have the requisite number of parking that we're talking about, you have to have a lot that's somewhere between 180 to let's say, 280-some feet wide, which is the width that you see typically of those kind of businesses, or they're immediately adjacent to and nearby this particular property. So what you have is this anomaly and a peculiarity of a residential space where lots were recombined, but only 105 feet width. And I suspect that might be why you had that parking lot before that had 45 spaces. It was only able to do so without these the sidewalk requirements. I do want to emphasize, though, that the city code requires not just a certain number of trees, and not just a certain size of trees and kinds of trees, and which in our application, by the way, we fully support and intend to do. There's not any request for reduction in the amount, the type, or the kind of the trees. The problem is that there's also a requirement within our code that the landscaping area along Carolina Beach Road South and along Buckingham has to be at least 15 feet wide. And that 15-foot wide depth would preclude the ability to be able to get the 30 parking spaces. It's also true with respect to the 5 feet wide requirement, that is with respect to the adjacent parking lot for a self-storage business that's immediately, I believe, just to the, yes, just immediately to the south of the property. We would plant, again, the same requisite number of trees that are needed in the space that is there, but we've got it proposed to be less than that requisite depth there. So again, you would have the visual barriers provided and the benefits that the trees provide through elimination of the hot spots and the visual attractiveness of it. We just want to make it a little bit more compact so that we can get the requisite parking so that the business has some kind of viability. Then finally, in summary, we have no problem, of course, with putting in the sidewalk along Carolina Beach Road South. Presently, there are 2 driveways there, entering there from Carolina Beach Road South. We propose eliminating those driveways, so you won't have vehicles turning in from Carolina Beach Road South. We would have those closed, and we'd have a sidewalk along there that's uninterrupted. And the way that's designed, that would allow for the kind of parking we're talking about. The problems with respect to the sidewalk requirement for Buckingham, I will go into that, but Buckingham is, again, a bit of an anomaly. I don't see anywhere that Buckingham is a dedicated street. It appears to be a street that really does not really exist, certainly as it was platted, and I'm not able to find any indication that Buckingham was ever dedicated to the city or been maintained or used by the city, and you would end up having a sidewalk that goes to nowhere. And so that's one of the reasons why that we're asking that the city eliminate that particular parking requirement. This is important enough that the owner of this property specializes in redeveloping properties that are in blighted, underserved areas, and to bring them with some vitality. Ami Yemeni is here from New York City, who owns this property and acquired it the day after the COVID restrictions were lifted in May of 21. The businesses there previously had struggled. The COVID-19 restrictions for restaurants and bars basically put it out of its misery. And Mr. Yemeni's group bought that property, and immediately through a broker, Eliza Santos is with us, okay, was able to find a tenant to come in here and to restore this property and to operate a Jamaican restaurant and a event center and nightclub at this particular site for this 3,500 square foot building, which has already been extensively renovated. And the owners of that business, Anthony Gilbert and Mandy Mead, who are here, have combined between them 20 years of experience of running restaurants and event centers, and are well aware of what it takes to run something like this successfully, the amount of parking that you need, and the like. So there are some exciting plans. The lease has been signed, and they are hoping to begin to occupy this building as early as October under the terms of this particular lease. And we have with us Trevor Smith of the local engineering firm Becker Morgan, who can provide you any details that you particularly require regarding this twofold request of eliminating the sidewalk to nowhere, I call it, on Buckingham Avenue, and basically compacting the space for the landscaping in order to make room. In other words, the volume of the trees is the same, the type of trees is the same, the buffering that is required, the advantages of that is the same. We just have it in not as wide an area in order to accommodate this modest request to allow for this business, which is going to have at times as many as 250 people inside, at least 30 spaces, whereas 20 just would not be viable under the current plans. Thank you. This is a particular site plan, and it shows how things are laid out conceptually and providing for the 20-some spaces, I'm sorry, the 30-some spaces. And if I can go to the next one, if I can, please. This is an aerial of the site, and you can see that our location is about right here, and that is Buckingham. And you'll see where Buckingham, this part right here, that very narrow part here, is paved, but then after that it gets to be gravel, and then after that it gets to be dirt, and it basically ceases to exist in dead ends, and basically doesn't exist anymore. It's just not the way things worked out, and I've got some ground photographs that will show that. Also, I have another aerial that I can show that shows that basically you can tell the comparative size that all around this particular location are restaurants with adequate width so that they have adequate parking for that particular location. It illustrates what I'm talking about. Contrasting the 105-foot width of this particular property next to these other adjacent businesses that are restaurants and whatnot, where the width is more like 180 to 250 some feet. Shows the submitted site plan that shows that where we have moved out the sidewalk. I'm not sure. Trevor, is this the particular site plan that we submitted? That's it. Okay, just want to make sure I've got it. And it shows the 30 spaces, and it shows particularly the location of the landscaping, and it shows that there's no sidewalk along there on Buckingham. I'd like to show you some, if I can, some of these photographs. This is a view, this is basically the end of Buckingham. On the other side of those trees is the portion of the right-of-way that goes all the way to Carolina Beach Road South. But you can tell that it ends, and that is a parking lot of the Apostolic Tabernacle Church that's right there. Trying to scroll down here. You can see that that particular area there is fenced off. There's no way you can go from that property onto that church parking lot where it's interrupted. That's looking in the other direction. That's the parking lot of the church, and then you can see that there's a facility right across the street. That's called Wonder Way, that street there. On that plat, back in 1967, that was for the Envision First Street. Apparently, they renamed it as Wonder Way. You can see there is no Buckingham Avenue that continues on there. This is a look at the beginning of Buckingham Avenue on Carolina Beach Road South. This is the very narrow part of that that is paved. In our investigation, we just simply have not been able to determine who paved it. But we don't have any indication either that the city did so. It's looking north, and there's a convenience store that's immediately adjacent there. As it turns out, there are really only 3 businesses that employ Buckingham Avenue at all. In fact, this proposed site, the convenience store, and then just behind our site is a Dempsey dumpster business where they store some dumpsters there. And so the bottom line is there's very little, if any, really pedestrian traffic that goes along Buckingham. I'm still trying to proceed downward, but it's not having a lot. That's Buckingham looking, if you would, eastward. That is the building for the proposed restaurant and event center. And that's the pavement as far as it goes. You'll see some activity that's on the left there. That's on the north side of Buckingham. But those businesses that are there actually gain access from the parallel street, Wellington. In other words, they don't use Buckingham for access. That photo I just showed you of the building shows that already the results of very extensive work that's already been done on what was that dilapidated building. It's sharp, and they're ready to start to do the interior work any time on that for this new venture, Jamaican restaurant. See down. Thank you. Keep going. All right, this is right here. That's continuing to look through Buckingham. You can see at this point, right next to the building, Buckingham is no longer paved. There is some gravel there, but then you can see as you continue to proceed up, it narrows quite a bit. Shows that's an adjacent activity there. That's a business that's located just on the north side of Buckingham. But again, they gain access from Wellington, not Buckingham. And you can see way off in the distance, you can see then where Buckingham ends, there's some heavy vegetation there. That is roughly the 100-foot width of woods that are there that abuts that church that I showed you pictures for, where there's now a fence that gets in around. So in other words, you can't continue to walk there and to get to any kind of activity that I can see that a pedestrian would be interested in getting to. That is the fence that encloses the back of the property where there's a stage, outdoor fire pit, and some other amenities that would go with an outdoor event for the property. And it shows as you get closer, you can see where then, and you can see some of the equipment from the Dempsey dumpster business that is located there on the right. Okay, and so I suppose that the gravel that's been put there would serve maybe some of the heavy vehicles that deliver and take away those dumpsters from time to time. So I think we've illustrated here the point that we think it's very reasonable, given the fact especially that in the city's 2014 Carolina Beach Road corridor plan, it calls for, of course, landscaping. It also calls that sidewalks can be installed where needed, where there's been an evaluation for the need of the sidewalk. So that's why we think that it's quite reasonable that we would ask through the Board of Adjustment for the requirement for the sidewalk to be waived in order to allow for sufficient parking spaces for this business to have a chance to survive and even thrive as going forward, because we just don't see any demonstrated need for traditional pedestrian access via sidewalks to go in this particular location. This is simply a photograph of the, if you would, of the plat that was filed in the 60s that showed what the vision was for, at that time, of Wellington and Buckingham Avenue to go all the way from Carolina Beach Road South, going to 17th Street. If you look in the lower left-hand corner there, you will see that there are 3 lots there, 1, 2, and 3. And those were combined for the lot frontage, and then there were several of these lots in behind that were then combined together to be this particular commercial site. So, and obviously these are the days that predated zoning, but it at least tries to illustrate it as to just peculiarity as to how we got here. I do have available Mr. Trevor Smith, Becker Morgan, and he could come and talk to you some plans specifically about what we're doing in order to create a landscaping product that we think that the city can be proud of.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Trevor Smith with Becker Morgan Group. The address is 333 Jekyll Drive. So if we could pull up the, is it possible to pull up the site plan again? The one that we submitted with the request? Is that okay to do?
Is that the one? Yes.
Yep, you got it. So
Thank you.
I'll just give you guys kind of just a brief overview of what we did here. So you can see the subject site there. We have an existing building that has been there for a while. Pretty much we were brought in to do a parking lot remediation on this site. So the site is off of Shipyard Boulevard running down Carolina Beach Road. Our site is going to have access off of Buckingham Road. If you remember, Steve mentioned that we had existing entrances off of Carolina Beach Road. We removed those due to safety, and after talking with NCDOT on that, so those have been removed. So we only have one access off of Buckingham Road there. We have supplied 30 spaces here. That is what the client needs in order to make this business thrive. And pretty much what you see is one-way circulation following the city standards on widths and lengths for the parking lot there. So that's pretty much kind of an overview of the design. If we take a look, we're providing sidewalk along Carolina Beach Road there as requested by the city, and then working with NCDOT on that. You'll notice that the sidewalk on Buckingham is not there, and that presents a little bit of an issue because of the landscaping requirements. So if you look at the site plan there, all the landscaping that we're providing is within the code counts, meaning we're providing every tree that is required. We're just having to do it within a shorter width because there simply is just not enough room with the parking lot and the needs that the client has to have to make this business functional. So what you'll see is that with the sidewalk on Buckingham, we had to remove it in order to achieve the street tree requirements for landscaping there. So that's why that is shown there. We also have the adjacent buffers as well. That is the same count as what is required. It's just within a smaller area. Same thing with the front along Carolina Beach Road. So if we were required to put that sidewalk in on the plan, it would eliminate us meeting code for the street tree requirements, and it would cause them to lose a full stack of parking on the outer left edge of the plan there. And the clients simply would not be able to have their business function with that many parking spots. So that's kind of just a brief overview of the site. If you have any questions, I can certainly answer them for you.
Does anyone have any questions at this time? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I actually have one question.
sure.
So you said that you're going to do the required landscaping amount, but instead of 15 feet, which I think is required.
Yes.
So what's your proposed, if it's less than 15 feet, how much less than 15 feet?
Right, so what you're seeing in there for the one requirement, I believe, of the landscaping inside the site, we're providing 6 feet there and then another 10 feet to the back of curb there for the street trees as well. Does that make sense?
No.
From the
Sorry.
edge of, no, you're good. From the edge of pavement there to the property line, it's 6 feet, and that's how we're meeting the landscaping requirement there for the site. And then outside of that, I believe it is another, it's got to be 5 to 10 feet there for the street tree requirement. Does that make sense? That's within the right of way, to clarify.
Okay,
So
and then on the
so-
side, it's the same. So there's supposed to be a landscaping buffer of 5 feet, but you're asking for that to be less also?
Yes, that's 3 feet there.
Okay.
So if I could just clarify on that, so I know it's supposed to be 15 feet, that's off the property line in there, we're showing 6 pretty much from the inside of the property.
Okay.
Any further questions that I can answer?
And this is too small for, what is behind the building that's currently there? Like, this looks to be a very long property. What's going behind the current building?
So that is going to remain unused for right now. The property is going to be subdivided at the back of the fence line there. So I don't believe there's any plans to use it at this point.
Okay.
Could you put additional parking in the rear where the unused portion of the property is?
I'd have to defer to the client on this, on what their plans are for that section of the property.
Okay.
Any further questions for me?
Anybody right now? We may later, but
Sure, yeah.
anybody right now? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The use of that property in the rear is something we could consider if we, and that dramatic increased expense involved of turning that into actually used property and triggering all of the additional code requirements that would have to be met to expand there in the back. But we would like to have at least some kind of an indication of success of the business model before we took that on.
So I think maybe for our purpose, in this part of your presentation, if you don't mind just going through each variance again,
I shall.
summary, I think it would be good for us to refresh on that.
To go through the variance itself.
No, with the three that you're wanting, like where your changes are,
Oh,
just to
okay.
be,
All right.
yeah.
Looking at that site plan there, let me bring that back up. It's basically,
Those are not the variance requests. Those are the city's requested conditions. Should we grant the variance?
yeah, those are the particular ones on site. Number one, you've got 18-319A4, which is the requirement that the landscaping area itself has to have a width of 15 feet. And we propose modifying that along Carolina Beach Road South in Buckingham, making it narrower, but containing the same numbered volume and the type of trees. It's just simply in a more compact area.
All right, so you're looking there for a 9-foot variance, is that correct?
Correct. Then, there's also 18-321B1 that requires 5 feet width with an adjacent parking lot. We're asking for a variance that would be 3 feet instead of 5 feet. Again, though also supplying the same number and type of trees.
So a 2-foot variance on the other side adjacent to the parking lot of the,
Then third, along Buckingham Avenue, we have the requirement in 18-359A10 that sidewalks would be installed, and we're asking for the waiver of that particular requirement along Buckingham Avenue.
All right, I just wanted to just get it clear for all of us, just to be,
Thank you.
all right.
And I hope that does. Would this be an appropriate time then to go over the criteria if the board
Yeah,
so
this is your
wishes?
time to present. You'll have more after the
I do
evidentiary.
want to make sure that I move into evidence the PDFs that I brought forward, and that's as well as a part of the record. There is a particular, attached in our submission.
Mr. Coggins, can you put the microphone up a
Yes.
little bit more?
Yes.
Thank you.
Attached to our submission is also an artist rendering that shows what the site would look like once these trees are put in. And I have to say, it's very impressive, particularly in that view along Carolina Beach Road South. And it's going to be quite an improvement over what we have right now. I don't believe you're going to be able to see anything on that site at all as you drive by on Carolina Beach Road South with those trees. The first criteria of the 4 is this an unnecessary hardship? And yes, because it eliminates, for reasons that are not clear to us, the needed 30 spaces total when we're actually providing all of the benefits that are sought through the landscaping requirements. That is, the same number of trees and density of them and their type and their maturity. We're just, the area in which they're planted is simply narrower, but providing the exact same benefits, whether it's visual attractiveness and also eliminating hot spots, if you would, and actually the wonderful function that trees do in cleaning the air. The second factor is whether or not this hardship arises from peculiarity. And again, we've illustrated that because of the anomaly, that this lot is a combination of all the lots that were available of a proposed residential subdivision back in the 60s before there was zoning to achieve that 105-foot lot that makes its width distinct from the other commercial properties in the rather large commercial services district there on Carolina Beach Road South in the vicinity of Shipyard Boulevard. In comparison, for instance, the adjacent property, the storage area is 165 feet wide. The convenience store is 215 feet wide. The Bojangles there is 243 feet wide. The McDonald's 202, the Hardee's 307, and the Waffle House 186. So this particular background of the subdivision, residential subdivision thing, reduces property in a size that's peculiar, at least in relationship to its commercial neighbors. The owner here obviously had no role in how that all evolved, but nonetheless wants to take the risk on this business being able to make a go of it on this 105-foot wide lot. We believe that this is consistent with the Land Development Code and the plans for the city. Again, it meets the requirements of the code regarding the number of plants, and also it is consistent with the code that sidewalks should be put in after there's been a careful analysis as to need. I think we've abundantly demonstrated, at least as of today in 2024 and the near foreseeable future, there's not going to be a need for a sidewalk there, and that's why we think it's perfectly reasonable for ask for the waiver of that requirement along Buckingham Avenue. We're certainly willing to have and want to have the sidewalk there on Carolina Beach Road South, and we have no problem with the curb and guttering requirement there at the intersection with Carolina Beach Road South and Buckingham. And note also that it's consistent with the desires for traffic safety. The public safety aspect of the spirit is met because we've eliminated that entrance from Carolina Beach Road South, which reduces the likelihood of traffic accidents and whatnot, that very busy area, that rather the sole way to get into the property is to turn onto that short paved version of Buckingham Avenue and to go into that side entrance there. Then finally, we have the substantial justice that would be involved in our volunteering to eliminate the driveways there on Carolina Beach Road South. Justice in restoring a business that died along with the imposition of the COVID-19 restrictions that were applicable to restaurants and bars at that time. And the justice in not imposing a sidewalk that is, from all accounts, unneeded.
All right, thank you.
Quick question for you. You're going to put a sidewalk on Carolina Beach Road. Do you also intend to curb and gutter on Carolina Beach Road through the turn radius on Buckingham?
I do know that we're having that, that is, yes, yes, yes. Is the
Okay,
answer.
thank you.
Anybody, any questions for Mr. Coughlin?
Yeah,
All right.
Curious if you guys looked at the site triangles from Buckingham onto Carolina Beach Road, because the proposed landscaping, is it in that site triangle for your DOT permit or anything like that?
I can't speak to a DOT permit.
Yeah, you might want to look at it. I mean, just looking from the plans, it appears it might be. And then if it's within that site triangle distance, then I think your vegetation can only be a certain height. So that probably goes into that as well.
Well, I don't believe the plantings there along Buckingham Avenue in particular, I don't believe any of those are major trees.
Okay.
For instance, I don't think there are any live oaks there.
Well, I mean, just in regards to this site plan you have up here, so if you're coming to Buckingham Avenue and looking left and right, there's site triangles that you have to have certain vegetation requirements in there if you put vegetation in there, so.
And that's what's provided, as you can see there.
Right, so what I'm curious about is if you're asking for a variance on your length or your offset from your property line, then our parking appears to you gain a little bit more parking, and then that might be into your site distance or your site triangles on your site plan. So just something probably should confirm, I guess, or if you could confirm it today, I think that goes it kind of will play an impact into, I think, our decision.
I have a moment then, Mr. Chairman?
Sure, yes.
I'm not sure what I need to do to address your question, but if I could perhaps have a brief recess, or you can go to another matter and we can return.
We have, some of the things we have to do, we're going to be doing the evidentiary, so we could, when we come back, you can come back with that information, because you still have more time to present afterwards. So why, I'll go ahead and we'll move into the evidentiary, see if any of the public wants to talk, and then we'll come back. How's that?
Thank you.
All right. And we'll have questions for the city after they're done for that, so he has the opportunity to hear what we talk about. All right. We're going to move forward to the evidentiary hearing to see if there's anyone present that wants to present additional information from the public that is relevant and material to this matter. Is there anyone that would like to speak at this time? Well, I didn't give you much time there, Ms. Coggins, but I tried. But seeing that we don't have any, we're going to go ahead and close the evidentiary hearing. Sorry, can't hear you.
We're making an inquiry right now with the Becker Morgan office and trying to actually reach someone with that respect.
Okay, and if you're okay with it, I think we'll probably have some questions for the city, and as long as you can, we want you to be able to hear what we're talking about, so if you have anything follow up on that. All right. See, anyone have questions for the city, for Catherine?
Can we go back to the slide with the city's additional recommendations on it? There we go.
So they're already doing number 3. in speaking with Mr. Coggins, number 3 is going to be done when they run the sidewalk down Carolina Beach Road. The curb and gutter will also be installed along Carolina Beach Road through the turn radius along Buckingham Drive. So that piece of the city's request is in place.
And these are all 3 conditions that city is asking if we would approve the variance
We approve the
requested.
variance.
Other questions for Catherine?
Catherine, you've got any portion of the sidewalk not installed along the property shall be subject to a fee. Is there any idea what that fee is, or is there a standard cost?
Yes, sir. It's currently at about $35 per linear foot for any portion of the sidewalk that's not installed along the roadway.
Used to put sidewalk in on other properties?
Yes, sir. That goes into a fund that's utilized to install sidewalks within the vicinity of the project sites. And those are typically prioritized by things like proximity to schools or other pedestrian, like heavily pedestrian traveled areas.
It was raised about the status of Buckingham Avenue. Can you expand? Is it maintained by the city? Or?
It is a 16-foot wide, city-maintained right-of-way. Even, beyond the portions that are improved, it's city-maintained for clearance. I don't believe that there are any plans to pave any additional area along Buckingham. I think it's currently at about 300 feet of it is paved. And so the city would request that, should the board grant the variances, that sidewalk is installed along the portions of Buckingham Drive that are already paved.
Okay, and is there going to be there's no parking restriction there at all?
There is no required parking there, and Mr. Moore, I think that was a really good point about the possibility of adding parking to the rear of the subject site. I'm not aware of any plans that the applicant has submitted that might employ that method of getting more parking on the site.
There will be no prohibition against additional parking in the rear, would there?
No, sir.
Other questions for anybody?
I guess this question is for the applicant. The first condition that the city has asked that we impose if we grant the variance request is about still doing the sidewalk from Carolina Beach Road to the, I guess, down Buckingham until it meets the driveway or the proposed driveway. Is that accurate?
That would be, at a minimum, yes, but preferably along the portion of Buckingham Drive that is improved already.
What is the applicant's position on doing a sidewalk from Carolina Beach Road to the proposed driveway for the restaurant?
It's unworkable because as shown on the plans, we need that requisite width there that the sidewalk would take up in order to meet the requisite number of spaces.
Okay.
Which is why we're asking, basically a variance from number 1 there, to not put in that sidewalk there.
That's what I thought, so I wanted to clarify.
We were, when we were doing the calculations at Becker Morgan over the past couple of days as to the cost to put in the sidewalk, our estimate was right around $25,000.
Have you done any, or is any exploration into providing additional parking in the rear of the building on the unused portion of the property?
No, Mr. Moore.
Just so and this is probably for Catherine, but so what your plan is, so for the side on Buckingham regarding the sidewalk, because so the requirement for the trees and the sidewalk, which is eating into the parking that they're looking for. I mean, you were looking at the trade-off of the requirement, excuse me, trade-off of sidewalk being there versus trees being there. Is that something that could be considered, because that would shrink that space?
I think we would look at it as a trade-off between parking being there versus sidewalk and landscaping being there. I'll note there was some emphasis on the width of the lot, and it's over 100 feet wide. The minimum lot width for the district that this property is located in is 80 feet. So, I mean, it's well in excess of what the minimum required lot width is for the district, and other properties have been able to develop with parking and landscaping and sidewalks as required by code. I'll also bring up the comment about the 2004 Carolina Beach plan, stating that sidewalks should be placed where needed. That plan's 20 years old now. We now have a comprehensive plan that covers not just Carolina Beach Road, but the entire city. And we have placed such emphasis on the need for sidewalks and the demand for sidewalks throughout the city that it is now a code requirement. It's not the need for it. It's a code requirement whenever a property is being redeveloped. I have spoken to engineering about this property. Their suggestion was to install sidewalk along Buckingham Drive where the property is currently developed, but to consider a fee in lieu for the remaining portion of the lot so that fee in lieu could be used to install sidewalks in the vicinity of this property to help connect it up with other sidewalks.
Can you, are we able to do where you put in the sidewalks on the part that's already being used, and then there was a restriction that if they develop the second part, that then the owner, because it's all one owner that owns that parcel, can you do that
He
in a
could
variance?
subdivide, and he did allude to potentially subdividing the site so that, and then he would not be required to put sidewalk along the parcel that isn't being developed currently, and then it would be required at such time that does come through for plan review.
I mean, when you mention the fact that there are going to be as many as 200 plus people there and having really no, and you're going to have cars, that many people with only that much parking, you're going to be utilizing Buckingham. The sidewalk is a safety issue.
There is, as I understand it, a potential option that the sidewalk could be moved further at that location. That would be to the north, further into the right-of-way. I believe that that would then result in perhaps 24 feet, Tyler, I believe, of paving that would then be available for street users if that sidewalk was moved approximately another 5 feet, I believe, to the north.
So you would
And that would allow us to keep the parking in that instance.
Yes, but you would be taking the 16-foot road and reducing it down to 11 feet, which would, I don't know how they,
As I understand, Buckingham
are you
is a
taking, you're going to go, I thought it was said that, I'm sorry, and I could be wrong, and we'll ask for clarification. I thought they said that was a 16-foot city maintained right-of-way.
I understood it was a 40-foot right-of-way.
I was trying to get the width on that, just so we were clear on that, because, you know.
The right-of-way itself is 40 feet.
Okay. All right. I was in my head trying to figure out how cars wouldn't even get down there. Okay, that works. All right. Okay. Do you have any information like that to relate, or you still?
I'm told it would be about another 5 to 10
Okay.
minutes.
I'm still questioning why the unused rear portion of the property wasn't considered for additional parking. If parking's the primary concern here and not doing what's required by code, why not consider the rear of the property for additional parking?
Well, that would be a dramatic increase in cost. Obviously, is what you can see for the photographs is that what you would have to deal with Buckingham Avenue, improving Buckingham Avenue, it's entirely up that entire length and the additional cost of that sidewalk. And again, with respect to, this is a new business, which we don't know it would be able to carry that cost, if you would.
While we're sort of waiting for some information, I guess, if we could, well, I don't want us going into any type of deliberation until we have full information. Any further questions for the city? You said about 5 minutes?
That's what I'm told.
How about what we'll do is take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back into that before we move forward.
Can I ask one more question that we don't have the answer to yet?
Yes, sir.
Is it just in the big picture, the adaptive reuse is appealing to me, taking an existing building and turning it into something new. Do we know what the built-upon area or the impervious difference is between what's there now? It looks like that it's paved to the corners, and with some additional landscaping in, potentially there may be a decrease in built-upon area or impervious coverage. Is that something that y'all could figure out while we're in a break?
I want to make sure I understand the question. Obviously, with respect to the building itself, there's no change.
But the parking lot out front, it was previously paved.
It was all asphalt surface. It was all impervious. So obviously, there's much less impervious surface now than what was there before.
Right, I was just wondering if we knew what that reduction was going to be.
How much that was, if I can calculate that, see what I can do.
Thanks.
All right, we will take a quick recess for 5 minutes. Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting back to order. All right, where we left off, we'll
I believe we could
turn it back
ask,
over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have the answers for your questions, and we could bring that particular plan up. And we do have the site triangles there as indicated. And indications from Becca Morgan is that we can still have those same trees there, slight sliding of the location of those trees to bring them out of the site triangle there.
Yeah, if I may interject?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that is my concern. Like, if we reduce your buffer, your setback or whatever for your landscape, then it pushes everything closer to the street within those site triangles. So I think, right, you guys are asking for a reduction from 15 feet to 5 feet, if I'm understanding it correctly.
What I'm saying there is those two trees that seem to be, or it looks like it might be just the one there. We would take that and just slide it horizontally to the right and still be able to meet the requirement there. Or the count, I should say, of the trees that are supposed to be there.
So what's the landscaping, like, requirement for the city for those, like, is 4 required, or is there an offset for landscaping, street trees, or anything like?
Within the site triangle, we wouldn't want anything above 30 inches or below 10 feet. I'm unsure that that accurately depicts the site triangle. It should be 20 feet from the intersection back into towards the property, rather than 10 as shown on the plans there.
Gotcha, so you're saying.
So if that's scaled, you could just kind of double it, and then you would see that, yes, there's at least one tree that would be within the site triangle.
Right.
So if we granted the request to reduce to 5 feet, then you would lose a tree, or you'd compact more of the trees into the area outside the site triangle. So, but if we kept it the same at 15 feet, then it would be consistent. We wouldn't need to change any of the landscaping plans or any of the landscaping requirements for this site, right? So I think that's kind of the main point. Right.
Well, that's the trees that are in the triangle there. Those are the ones that are within the in the right of way, I believe.
Okay.
That's the right of way street tree requirement.
No, what I'm saying is, so if we kept it at 15 feet, we just moved we would center those trees within the 15 feet. So it'd be more, they'd be 7.5 feet.
Okay.
Right, I guess. So then it wouldn't require any adjustment. We wouldn't need to, approve your adjustment. But yeah, I think for this case, I was just interested in how it would affect our decision on it. So yeah, I got it. Thanks.
And the other
Anything
thing.
else I can add to that to kind of help prove the point?
Yeah,
paint the picture?
this is the time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much like I just talked to my landscape architect on this, we would take those trees in the front, slide them down to the right, get them out of the triangle so that there would be no issues. They believe that that we can make that work no matter what.
Okay.
There was a question, I believe it was by Board Member Newman, on the amount that the impervious surface has been reduced by virtue of this proposal. And it does, in fact, reduce that amount of impervious surface by 3,000 square feet.
All right. Anything else? All right,
And then there was a question again about the suitability of the property that was in the rear, about whether or not it would be suitable for parking. But as it turns out, there is a stream that runs through it and is wet, and it just simply wouldn't be available for that purpose.
Okay, anyone, other questions for Mr. Calkins? All right, let's just go back into, we've been all over the place, so I'm trying to make sure we're back on our procedural.
If I may provide a point of clarification on the site triangles, there are two different ones. One is a measurement from a driveway to a street, and then we also have a different triangle for intersections of two streets, which this would fall under, and that's a 46-foot by 46-foot triangle rather than 20 by 70.
So it's 46 by 46?
Yes, sir.
That would take out that whole corner of the parking lot for the site triangle.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said if it's 46 by 46, we've got to go back a significant amount and then come down. It's not going to, it's going to eliminate a couple of the other street yard trees, or require them to be moved anyway.
We would just simply have to find another place to put them.
Yeah, they have to be moved, yeah.
I believe it would be appropriate to simply say that the site triangle requirements would have to be met, and that the number of trees are required at the site, and that we would be given the discretion where to place those.
Well, yeah, I'm looking at 46 by 46, and if you're backing that 70 feet back up, that one tree that is partially within the site triangle depicted there is no longer going to be within the site triangle. So I'm not sure that's going to make, 46 by 46 will make a significant difference. I think you can still move the trees around and
Yes.
meet that fine.
All right. So in going, basically to see if there's anything else you'd like to present, and I'll see if anyone has any other questions.
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, all right. Anybody have any questions regarding the, all right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, does the city have any additional information to present and give your input on?
Nothing from the city. Just happy to answer any questions you may have of staff.
All right, anybody have questions? All right, then we can discuss how we move forward on this one. Who wants to go first? Like I said, we have three variances to consider.
You know, the easiest one to me initially is going to be the 2-foot variance on the sidewalk, or the parking lot to parking lot.
I could have gone first on that one.
Yeah, and I think,
Well, and we can vote per variant to make it clear so that we have
Yeah, if you're
no
going to go
problem with
different
that.
ways, that's fine.
Yeah, so, can we bring up the variances back up on the, all right, so why don't we go with the variance, which one you want?
variance request, the second piece of the variance request was a 2-foot variance on the parking lot to parking lot abutment, a 2-foot variance from the width of the buffer. And to me, that's really parking lot to parking lot. That is an insignificant request to me, and I wouldn't have any problem making a motion to approve the 2-foot variance request based on the 4 findings of fact for the parking lots abut, 2-foot landscape buffer variance, provided the plantings meet the city requirements.
I'll second that.
And is it outlined enough for your record, since I'm
I'd just
splitting
like
them
to clarify, since you're not going in order of
Yeah.
the requests, that this one's to City Code Section 18321 for a variance of 2 feet to the required 5-foot buffer.
That's a better motion.
That is a better motion. That's why we ask. All right, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? So that variance is granted. Let's move on to the next one we'd like to talk about. We have the front, 9 feet, and then the sidewalk. Anyone want to?
I don't have a problem with the sidewalk not being there on Buckingham Avenue if they pay the fee in lieu. I think given that the end of that is gravel and it dead ends into a fence, I don't really see the need for a sidewalk there.
And they will have curb and gutter curving off of Carolina Beach through the turn radius along Buckingham. So I'm really okay with the third variance request also, which is the Buckingham, but the fee in lieu, I think it's $35 a foot.
So then you're in this, you're saying that no sidewalk at all, they would not be required to put part of the sidewalk in and then payment in lieu for the rest of the property?
Correct. I think my initial question was, would they be willing to do it to the driveway on Buckingham? But I think the applicant stated that takes away parking spaces, which is the point of the variance to begin with. So I think it would have to be an all or nothing on Buckingham with a fee in lieu.
Is there a motion related to, that would be?
So I can make a motion that we approve the variance for, that's not, I'm not sure which section of the code that is.
This is City Code Section 18359A10 is the requirement for the installation of sidewalk.
Okay, so we approve a variance for City's Code Section 18-359A1 with the condition that a fee in lieu is required for the portion of the sidewalk they are not installing on Buckingham Avenue. Correct.
All right, there's been a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, the motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? I'm a nay. That passes. We'll go on to the final one, relating to section 18-419, relating to the
This one will
front.
be for Section 18319
319.
for the streetscape landscaping.
All right. Thoughts about this one? Anyone have a directive?
I mean, 9 feet's a large variance, but it is unique because of Buckingham and Carolina being on that corner and Buckingham being an odd street.
I guess if anything was approved, it would have to meet the requirements, the DOT requirements, and then still have the amount of trees that would have to be put in. So it could eventually, it could eat into their parking, not by anything we vote on, but that is a safety contingency based on what we've discussed concerning the safety triangle, the turning issue on that.
I think the other part of it, though, is that the reduction in impervious surface for the site, and then the adding back of some landscaping. I mean, there's really nothing there, and so you're putting things back. You're making the site condition better, and in the big picture, you've got a business and a building that will be able to go in and revitalize a section of Carolina Beach Road.
I also think that approving the other two variances without approving this one really doesn't do the applicant any good.
Anyone have a motion related to this?
I'll make a motion that we grant the variance as requested to City Code Section 18319A4.
All right, and is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, it's been,
And I don't know, do we need to put a condition on it, or is it in their application that they're going to, while we're granting the variance for the width of the landscaping buffer, we are not, they still have to put the required number of trees in the smaller space?
We will make sure to add that condition to the order.
all right, so that it's been a motion and a second with the condition that it complies with the remaining items. I'll take a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? I'm a nay, but that passes. All right, we will move on to, we're going to go back. We're going to go back to item number 4 for 14 Wilmington Avenue. All right, so I know it was a little longer than probably thought, so, but how would you like to?
We would like to proceed.
Okay.
I apologize, and we do appreciate the board's grace in this situation.
No worries, and like I said, we appreciate it, so we'll move forward. So we've already had the city presentation, so we'll move on to your part.
Yep. Again, Jake Modesto, 16030 Moxie Glen Court, Charlotte, North Carolina. The staff did a great job summarizing the project. Essentially, what we're doing is proposing the removal of several specimen trees around the perimeter of the site and several located in the perimeter. The existing parcel is less than an acre and has over 100 trees in and around the property itself. Looking at it from a top-down perspective, no other property in proximity has anything like this when it comes to the number of trees. Also looking at the actual configuration of where these trees are located as part of the document that we provided, read C1.1. It shows kind of the location, the clustering of a lot of the trees, kind of in the southern portion of the property. And as much as possible, what the applicant has done has pushed all its proposed improvements to the northeast corner away from those trees. Now, that being said, it's still going to require the removal of some of these trees. We are proposing, this is step 1 of 3 for this proposed project, consisting of 13 townhomes. What essentially will happen is we will construct and remove as few trees as possible to allow this to happen. Again, the configuration and maintaining the open space allows us to do that. We provided written summaries for the various hardships associated with the application itself. But some of the things that I think staff had identified within their letter regarding, we'll call it the geometrical top-down view of the trees, not necessarily interfering with building footprints. There's more to trees than just their geometric site location on a plan. They also have tree root systems. Now, the actual footprint itself may not interfere with what we see on a top-down view of the actual plant itself. However, these larger trees do have more integrated root networks that the actual foundations we believe would actually interfere with. And so, maybe in a year, if we kept this down, we chopped out the roots, that the tree ended up dying and then putting us in a detriment here with the removal of that tree happening because the tree died. So instead of allowing that to happen, we are requesting the variance now, being forethought. As much as possible, the applicant has looked at as many ways as possible to reduce its impact on the specimen trees. Obviously, the location in which these trees are located does prevent any kind of development within the CS or the proposed zoning to be effectively used in this space, which is zoned, again, is for a commercial development. Currently, we're looking to go to a multifamily. But we have submitted significant evidence as far as meeting the criteria of the hardships, and that really, if I can answer any questions you guys have at this time.
All right, do you have any questions?
Is there a copy of the site plan with, we've got where the trees are, is there a copy of the site plan?
The site plan, yep, it's it's part of the actual record, C.1. C1's the next page up, yep. We did look at configuring this in a more linear fashion that didn't actually end up saving a lot of the trees. It actually created a larger footprint of development. We were still under the maximum building allowed, which is 70% within the proposed zoning. So we're at like 30%. So significant less than what's required and still complying with all the open space buffer requirements. In addition to that, I do want to note the fact that, obviously we talked about top-down, the subsurface component. The applicant is looking to reutilize, or we'll call it include, the basin to the west of the property itself to continue to reduce its impact subsurface, which would potentially reduce its impact to those significant trees. I think staff has done a great job within their findings. So the suggested conditions related to if we're able to save a tree during construction, that the proposed improvements do not cause an issue with those, that would then be, removed from that tree. But we want to be as thorough as possible when we're proposing this development. And again, with the intent to save as many trees, this is what we put forward, and we'd agree to those conditions as well.
Okay. Other questions?
If you had an arborist look at the trees on the perimeter as far as the root systems go?
We haven't had them look at it from a root system standpoint. I think that would then require some additional, invasion just to confirm where they're at. We haven't evaluated at the full extent at this time.
Okay.
How about, because of eliminating these, how about adding back? Are you planting more trees?
We're going to be required, this is again step one, and will be a three-step process. We will then have to still work through with city staff and related to the actual, we'll call it landscaping portion of the property. So if we're able to maintain some of these, there's obviously associated buffers or replacement requirements, and we're going to be working with them to comply with that as best as possible.
All right. Anybody else have any questions at this time before we move forward? All right. We probably will have some. Oh, you got one? Good. Not yet. Okay. We'll go into the evidentiary, and we'll be back with you. All right. City, have anything before we go into the evidentiary portion?
And nothing further from the city. I mean, we would like to reiterate that we haven't seen any proposals that would minimize the footprint even more to try to save some of the trees along the perimeter. But we do note that most of the trees proposed for removal are very close to the property lines, and it seems like shifting the buildings would be manageable to facilitate a little bit more tree save on this site. We as staff do have some flexibility to alter setback requirements whenever it's in the interest of saving a regulated tree.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we're gonna move on to the evidentiary hearing. We'll open it up for any one non-party that would like to present any information from the public that's relevant. Is there anyone at this time? All right, not seeing any, we'll go ahead and close the evidentiary hearing. We'll we'll come back into if there's anything else the applicant would like to present, and I'll see if there's any other questions too, so.
The applicant just would like to note the fact we've submitted written evidence or written summaries on how we comply with the Forest Set standards to allow for a variance to be granted, along with the testimony provided. That's all we have for this application.
Okay, and what was brought up by the city is about the fact that the majority of the trees are on property lines, the repositioning the buildings, if that was considered.
It was considered. When we initially put this proposal in front of it, we had a conference call with city staff regarding, and we actually had a more linear project where we'll call all 13 units were in one linear fashion across the right of way. When evaluating that, we actually had a significant issue when it came to open space. Obviously, as we shift the development further south, that's also located where some of the significant trees the specimen trees are located. So what we're actually doing is pushing everything further to the northeast. This was made. There have been some other modifications that have been made to this application that has allowed even more buffering along they will call it the western property line and the southern property line. The pinch point for us is actually site circulation when it comes to this development. We've come down and pulled in the actual driveways themselves. That's what's dictating this and allowing for a fire truck to get through. So fire safety, all that has been evaluated. There will be a separate submission when we go through that next board, which again is going to continue to push this development forward into the northeast corner. And then that's why we want to work with staff. I think that was one of the conditions to make sure that we're still playing around that to preserve those trees. It is in the applicant's best interest to preserve those trees. There's, I think the way the code is written is it incentivizes them, right? We save those trees, we don't need to provide necessarily the mitigation associated with them, you know, at a 200% DBH to what we're removing. So the applicant is incentivized, and they want to. This is going to be a residential development. They want to see these trees there. At this time, though, we cannot commit to be able to save them through construction. Those parking lots have a subsurface component to that, so they uphold through the years. We'd rather we request it now, and then as I think staff is one of the conditions, we come back and that variance be removed if that tree doesn't need to be removed.
Okay.
So I think the board is also protected in that sense of, you know, if the tree is saved, the variance doesn't lie there and we don't have to knock it down.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll ask the city again if you have anything. Do you have anything else?
No, nothing further from the city.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Thank you. All right. Ask. What is your thoughts?
I understand the essential site improvements component and the part about circulation, but if we could go back, can we go back to the picture with where the trees are? I think what gets me, what I struggle with is, you know, the two large live oaks that are both on the perimeter. We put a lot of time and effort into trying to preserve those types of trees, and especially the 48-inch live oak on the right-hand side. I don't know if there's a way that we could do, you know, request that the applicant come back and really try to work with staff to retain those, you know, at least the live oaks on the perimeter or the live oaks and the longleaf pines, and come back with something different and look at buffers and then see if there are any variances we need to consider after that. But I struggle with the request.
Yeah, and the 24-inch live oak I see because of its placement, but the other ones I also have issue with. Sure. Mm-hmm.
I would just like to work the board around the actual requests and the thought through each one. We'll start with what would be the frontage across Wilmington Avenue, the 48-inch tree. That is being requested to be removed due to the fact that we're adding sidewalk, which is required for this proposed development. So, you know, if the board is looking for us to waive, which we've been told that's not a situation that this can be waived for sidewalk, that'd be something considered we can maintain that. However, the thought here is to have a continuous street frontage with the sidewalk, with street trees, that'll be part of the proposed development that will go through TRC. That is why that one's being requested. The northern one, the 29-inch, located on the north side, again, that goes into the proposed location of the building, trying to keep everything away from the southern property line. That would be within, I think it's 3 feet of the actual proposed building itself. So pushing everything to the northeast, it's a 6-foot buffer in that location. The building's been put again away from the southern portion of the property where there are other significant trees, specimen trees on the south corner. So that one, we believe there will be an issue when we go to construct that the amount of roots that will be removed part of that will put that tree in danger of it either falling on our property or the adjoining property. So we do think that's a public safety situation. The live oak, the 40-inch, again, same idea, the subsurface condition. That's the one, I do think if there's any one that would be saved, it would be that one. However, there's pavement and we would do our best. I think that's the one, I think what staff talks about. If it's going to be replaced, again, it's one of the largest that we have proposed. I would target that one to be really focused on it being saved. However, just the location of the proposed drives, the lot width, which is, you know, half of the actual lot frontage, which is part of the conditions that we've messaged of why this relief is being requested. That one is the one we're looking to save, but that is what we're having issues with the subsurface component as well. And then the one on the south side, the leaf pine, there's actually 2. Those, again, same situation, kind of as the northern one, where the building footprint itself, where it's not necessarily in it, it would probably be within the footprint of the actual tree roots. So that is why, and again, it incentivizes the applicant. If we can remove impact to those, we will. And I think that was one of the conditions. As soon as if we're able to maintain it through working with city staff and knowing that is going to be on this condition, because we do have other components of this application to go forward. That's kind of like we'd have to come back here if we were to request a different relief to a different tree. Whereas if the requests were given now, it would go away if it's not acted upon. So I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, no, I'll see the other questions. I mean, I see the difficulty with the narrowness of the lot, but, and you talked about fire safety because of the drive, but the drive could be a one-way drive. You could find.
We evaluated it from a one-way drive. Again, there is another iteration of that plan set that occurred because we're about to submit for our TRs, our rezone, our conditional rezone. We did that with a more pinched-in driveway. We were going, I think it was 20 feet, which is I'd say approximately the bare minimum needed to run a truck, which we did. We ran that truck through the property. Now, I know there was a site plan that was provided. Again, we are continuing. There's another iteration of that where we're continuing to push that property to the northeast corner. They said that the general changes were not that significant. We're talking pulling those driveways in 2, 3, 4 feet so that we can, again, preserve that southern component where that potentially that longleaf pine on the south side could be saved. But right now, it's when we get to construction, we get there, we start digging the foundations, and that root comes up. Are we going to come back here in front of the board and request that after the fact, or just let it happen on site? I'd rather request it now and not have that situation where, we're asking for something after the fact. It's a responsible request, it will be from the applicant.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Could I just clarify? I have a question. Did you say that you have an updated site plan that's different from the one that was?
We've been working on one that was.
Can you, you'll have to talk into the mic, sorry.
No, we are working on one that was updated for the actual conditional rezone, which came from some of the comments that we received during the pre-TRC meeting for the conditional rezone. So that plan, I have a copy. I would send it in.
So the site plan that we're looking at today and evaluating the need to remove specimen trees on is not the site plan that's most up to date?
In my opinion, the shifts are minor, and it's 4 or 5 feet here and there from a top-down standpoint. Again, the issue that we're running into, and I'm trying to identify, it's the subsurface component. That's the concern, I think, that's creating the need to remove those trees. It's the root systems associated with those trees. So yes, on a geomatic standpoint, looking down at it, it doesn't conflict with the tree. However, trees cannot be sustained without having their root system maintained.
We understand that, and so we have a critical root zone that's required for trees that you're aware, but I haven't seen any plans that show the critical root zone overlaid on the site plan. Have you prepared anything like that at this point?
We do have a critical root zone, yes, for the trees that are required, yeah. They'll be maintained. That has not been provided to this board. But if that's something that would be needed to continue forward with this application, it's something that we can provide to staff.
It seems relevant to the board.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just one. I think that you are, by just hearing that there is a change and we don't have that, we are making a decision without really the information we have that could impact you not being able to do something or something else happening. I mean, it's your decision.
No, I understand, and I wish I had a copy of it to show you. I think from a top-down, unless you're pulling out the actual measurements and dimensions, it is tough to see the changes. However, when it comes to the spacing and maintaining some of that, that's why it wasn't resubmitted back in. Again, we're trying to keep the record clean, but if that's something the board would like to see kind of moving forward to help understand kind of where the application is going, that's something we can provide.
I'll ask, is that something you need to make your decision?
Well, I mean, one of my initial question was, have you had an arborist evaluate this? You see where the root systems are in relation to where the construction is. I mean, the 48-inch live oak on the sidewalk path, I can see that now. I mean, I understand that, and I said thank you for your question there. But the 39-inch live oak and maybe the 29-inch longleaf pine and maybe even the 28-inch bald cypress, I think it would be good to have a layout of where the new iteration of the buildings is and what the critical root ball is. I mean, what we're looking at, how much is, and I mean, and we've had instances in the past where we've had an arborist evaluate, and so, this is, this tree's going to die, or this tree's going to be
Right.
okay.
So we could continue to the next meeting, so you have the ability of submitting that, or we can make a decision. It's all, I know you had to, we had
I
to
know, I
we had to
feel
take
bad.
you down to,
We're back to the road we were, but,
Yeah.
Hearing kind of where the applicant feels they're doing the right thing and doing the best to implement, we do feel like we should add something else to this submission. So, we'd like to continue to be able to show you kind of the efforts and the thought process going into the request. That's something we'd like to continue and then provide that documentation to you.
okay, yeah, and you will be on the top of the agenda when you continue, so if there's any benefit.
And just for clarification, when would that next meeting be?
It would be October 17th.
October 17th, okay.
And also on October 17, we may be able to have an alternate here, so you don't have to have a unanimous vote on your request, too.
I mean,
There are added benefits, yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's your option, we can vote on, if you'd like to continue, we can do that.
I think it's the appropriate measure. I don't think we're seeing eye to eye, and we want to show and present that, kind of where our request is, for sure.
Okay.
What was that date, Jeff?
October 17th.
Okay.
Before we continue this item, I would like to point out, because it may be relevant in your design work, but we do have the ability to shift sidewalks around trees, whether that may need, an access easement to put it on private property or whatever the case may be, but we do have that flexibility.
And I think that's maybe where I understood some of the language when it came to some of the conditions that are located within the actual, the approval. I think the staff had requested that. I was understanding that that's what potentially that was looking for, is that during the actual TRC process, we got a more evaluated site configuration through the other processes. That's something we could look at to save these trees. Again, the applicant would like to save them if possible, but if that's stuff we want to look at now, we can pursue that. We wanted to have more flexibility with staff as we approached that component of this project. So it's more of a factor of where do we want to be critical at this point. It's something that would then kind of maybe become a holding point as we go further on through the rest of the conditional rezone and the TRC process. So that's kind of where we were at with that condition. When I saw that condition, I thought, oh, this is great. This is an opportunity to really work to save these trees, to relocate the sidewalk, to play around with some of those buffers. But if we want to, I still think we should, from hearing what the members have mentioned regarding the root zone, it's something we can provide. It's something that's definitely available for us. Plus the updated site, I think, will look a lot better. But that's kind of what my understanding too of that condition was, that the idea is to save these trees.
And we would do that with any regulated tree on the site. We would try what we could at a TRC level to save it. Since these are specimen trees and the board has to approve their removal, it would probably be important for the board to see that you've pursued whatever avenues to save as many trees as you can.
Of course, and I think too, also, we'll definitely provide the initial layouts that we did for the property as well, to see where we came from the beginning, the inception of this project to where we are now. So I still think we'll have to continue. Thank you.
Sounds good, thank you.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll take the consideration. There's been a request for a continuance. Anyone?
Do we do a motion for the continuance?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to propose a motion that the applicant's request to continue item, what item are we on here?
It's item number 4.
Item number 4, 14 Wilmington Avenue, to the October 17 Board of Adjustment meeting.
For a second.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it's been approved, and we will see you in October.
And maybe just for clarity, there's no need to renotice for that, and then.
No, sir, we've continued to a date certain, so the notice is still valid.
And then a resubmission date
You won't need to resubmit, it's just a continuance of the current application. But any materials that are updated, you just provide those as soon as you can, but you're welcome to also provide them at the hearing. It just doesn't give the board as much time to review them.
I would prefer to get it in advance, so thank you. When would that date be preferred to have those to the board members before it's?
If you would like for the board to receive the items prior to the hearing, then you would need to have it to us a week and a half before the hearing.
Thank
So October 7th or 8th, I believe.
Thank you for the clarity.
All right, well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to move on to item number 6. It involves 7333 Orchard Terrace. It's a variance to City Code Section 18-199 to allow an existing accessory structure that was issued a permit in error to remain, even though it extends closer to the corner side property line than primary structure. And Bentley, we'll let you move forward.
All right, good afternoon. This is our final case. Mr. Sam Catalano has been very patient with us this afternoon. So 733 Orchard Trace is a subject property located in a corner parcel within the R15 residential zoning district. According to New Hanover County tax records, the subject parcel is approximately 21,167 square feet, or 0.49 acres, and contains one 2,103 square foot single dwelling residence. On April 17th, 2024, the applicant submitted a permit application for the construction of a 256 square foot accessory building as shown here on your screen. On May 2nd, the applicant received permitting approval from both city zoning and New Hanover County Building Safety. On August 8th, 2024, city zoning officers failed the final inspection of the accessory building due to the structure being located closer to the right-of-way than the primary unit. On or about August 12th, 2024, city staff determined that the building had been constructed as permitted, even though it was constructed closer to the right-of-way than the principal structure. Here are some photos from the site visit of the zoning officers that were out there. As you can see, the site plan shows a fence on the left-hand side and a fence on the right-hand side, and that is the accessory structure existing in between those two fences. The right-of-way to the right-hand side on this photo is Mason Borough Sound Road. So you can kind of see the comparisons here. City staff met with the applicant on August 13th, 2024, and accepted a variance request for the location of the newly constructed accessory building. This matter is set before the Board of Adjustment today, September 19th, 2024. I am available, as well as the applicant, to answer any additional questions that you may have. We would also like to submit the staff summary and all attachments to the board. It is my understanding that the applicant would not like to speak today at the meeting. If there are any questions, he is available to come up, but would prefer that city staff handles the case for him.
Okay.
Thank you.
That works. All right, thank you. Since that's the case, I don't have to ask if
Perfect.
on that part, so we'll note that. All right, so we will we'll move into, is there any other information?
Any questions for myself?
Does anyone have questions at this time?
Perfect.
All right, so we will move into the evidentiary hearing and open up to non-parties that would like to speak and related material or substantive evidence for this matter. Is there anyone that would like to speak? I know. No one else can see that but you. But okay, so I'll go ahead and close the evidentiary. And is there any additional information for the city? All right. And yes, ma'am? No? Okay. That being the case, I'll ask what your thoughts are and how to proceed.
If there is no discussion, I'd like to propose that we grant the variance as requested.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, there's been motioned and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? The variance is approved, and thank you for your patience, sir. It was one of our longest meetings, and you got at the end of it, so I apologize. Yeah. All right, is there anything else today? All right, let's go home. Oh, there we go. There we go.